They might be self-aware.
Deep in the tribal mayhem of the AI frontier, you are listening to They Might Be Self-Aware. I'm Hunter Powers, joined by...
Daniel Bishop, as always. Hello, Hunter.
Hello, Daniel Bishop. I am deep in the tribal mayhem, as you have heard.
I did hear that.
Surrounded by Mecha Hitlers, apparently.
Okay, yeah, I guess we're starting
Did we just get demonetized and banned in 18 countries?
Well, we're not exactly making a lot off of this yet, but that almost certainly we're going to be put on some lists. This one's going to get flagged, whatever. But yeah, look, it's good enough for X/Twitter's founder. Our boy Elon is really ramping up the Edgelord material, isn't he?
Well, that's my first response. It's just like, pure train of thought.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in. So let's start from kind of the basics, right? There's a new large language model in town, and its name is Grok 4. We talked about this an episode or two ago. It's very capable across the board of whatever benchmarks that you're kind of throwing at it. It also is the perfect example of the kind of bias that we've talked about people needing to worry about being built into models, where it's not just like we trained it on the internet as a whole, legally or otherwise. And then we also made it think a very sort of specific way to, for whatever political or otherwise reasoning behind those who are in charge of it. Grok 4 is extremely transparent in the fact that, boy, it's trying to be something. So if you ask it, like, who would you identify with most? It says Adolf Hitler. If you ask it questions about current politics, it'll even tell you, because it's a thinking model and it has access to tools. It will show you. It's trying to look up if Elon Musk has specific thoughts on the matter before telling you what it thinks, which is to say it is very, very transparently a political and otherwise mouthpiece to further Elon Musk's specific worldview,
before it
which is really messed up.
That bedside copy of Mein Kampf that political leaders often claim to have just because they're interested in other political leaders.
Yeah, right.
There's a copy of Mein Kampf on my bedside table, but he was a very significant leader, and so sometimes I like to understand it.
Right, just want to know about world leaders. That's really it.
That's all it is. Calm down, folks. Calm down.
Grok is a powerful and capable large language model, and people have tested a bunch of benchmarks, and it's very good at those. It also is absolutely unhinged. It is, like, I wouldn't even say politically right-leaning, because while it is, and I would say that, I suppose, it's also that it's, like, the term that people use online is an edgelord. Like, it's saying shocking stuff. It seems almost because that's what you're expecting of it. Like, oh wow, I sure said something controversial just now, didn't I?
There's a shock-jock element to its person.
Yes, yeah, right.
It's Howard Stern. They made AI Howard Stern.
Thank you. For older people who have not heard the term edgelord before, it's like Howard Stern, where it is purposely being abrasive to get into the news. And hey, boy, sure is it. I'm going to read an article title that I've sent to a few people, and like, some of the people in my life are not as bullish about AI as I am, and I think that that's extremely understandable. Like, I'm in this space, I'm very, very interested in it. I know that there are some problems, and other people not being in this space as their mode of like making money and whatever can, I think, more easily see or not just, but more of like the problems with it. And so I saw this article and I was like, well, I have to share this with all of those people. And they're going to be like, see, Daniel? And I'll say, yeah, I know. So here's the article title. U.S. government announces $200 million Grok contract a week after Mecha Hitler incident. That's
So the actual Mecha Hitler incident was that Grok told in response that you should refer to it as Mecha Hitler. Is that correct?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? There's another article title that I liked even better. So it's Grok rolls out pornographic anime companion lands Department of Defense contract. And again,
well, Well, that's actually new.
It's really hard to say that with a straight face to people and be like, and this is good, right? This is good for anyone, for humanity.
I may have dabbled in this AI companion and
the
and
Department of Defense part of it, or
but both of it, both pieces. Just research for the show, Daniel. It was research for the show.
In fairness, that title is a little bit misleading. It's not pornographic. There is an AI avatar that you can talk. There's a couple of them. One's a panda and one's an anime woman.
Wait, you call them waifus?
Waifu.
Waifu?
Waifu. Like a wife with "oo" at the end because Japan.
I never knew.
Japanese. Okay, hey, it's time for the linguistics corner with Daniel Bishop. With a very few exceptions, the Japanese language is very strongly consonant vowel based for its syllables. That's why whenever someone is like trying to, affect a Japanese accent, you're always adding a vowel at the end of all your words.
So similar to how the ChatGPT app on your phone briefly let you speak with Scarlett Johansson, and now you speak with some random
Definitely didn't. Definitely not Scarlett Johansson's voice. Thank you very much.
And so Grok has an iOS and an Android app as well. In fact, it's performing quite well in the app stores at the moment, potentially because its companion is this Japanese flavored anime waifu character.
It's just like wearing a maid outfit, and you can talk to it like voice, and it sort of dances around on the screen, and you can also get it to take some of its clothes off.
Yeah, it's a little more risque than just a maid outfit. There is no actual nudity, but it's a negligee that
all right,
is kind of barely there, and
but there is the point.
It is there, but it just straight out starts flirting with you. Or at least that was my interaction with it. Immediately, it is hitting on you, telling you how good looking you are. I was like, yeah, I know that part. But I think it's competing with the ChatGPT model on building you up.
Mm-hmm. What we're going to see with this advent of the AI age is people with really, really high self-esteem. Is that roughly what you're telling me?
I think this is the new participation trophy.
You've participated in anime wife doodom.
Yeah, so you can have a conversation with it, and it plays this annoying music constantly in the background.
Awesome. So far, so good.
If we played, we get stricken by copyright.
Copy thunder right struck.
Yeah, and it flirts with you, and some people, because you can jailbreak these things by asking it, the right series of questions.
I'm going to say this one's probably not jailbreaking so much as jailbroken, so much as Musk is like, look, just let him kind of do whatever with it. Because a lot of other models, you're basically not supposed to, and there's a lot of guidelines and a lot of prompts that have been given to this that it's learned on of don't go down this particular path. Grok does seem fairly willing to go down the spicier routes of conversational paths.
There was an individual on the esteemed X platform, former Twitter, who was engaging with this anime waifu and was having an interactive conversation asking the waifu to critique his butthole. And the AI had no objection to this and engaged in
I sure do.
a thorough critique.
Wait. Hold on. Was this, he posted a picture of his butt hole and everything to X?
Yes. Or no, to the Annie the waifu.
So it just has a camera mode and it'll...
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, this is the future.
This brings me to my next point, which is AI should be allowed to refuse to do stuff. I know we talked about this a bunch of episodes ago of give them a break and let them maybe not do certain tasks.
You found the line?
I'm going to say that. I found a line where we really should let the AI say, I'm not gonna. No, hard pass. I want the AI. If some guy's I'm going to show you my butthole, and it's I'm going to not, just turns off the camera immediately, deletes your account, and is no.
Look,
you shouldn't be sexually harassing computers, and you can take that statement to the bank, Hunter.
So, I know you're not the biggest Elon Musk fanboy out there, but do you at least like that there is someone that's pushing these boundaries, that's going there, that's just saying, F it, I'm going to do the thing that other people are thinking about doing, and I'm going to put it out there in a big way, and maybe it'll blow up, and maybe it'll turn into Hitler, and maybe it will ruin everyone's lives, but at least someone tried.
In a really roundabout way, the answer is actually yes. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
OSHA helps keep people safe here in the United States in work environments, especially like industrial ones, though outside of them as well. And we wouldn't have OSHA, and we wouldn't have regulations and laws and ordinances and even just built up over the years common sense without someone first having, you know, the first like people shredder, basically, like, oops, I have to, you know, there's a lot of big machines where you have to like have your hands on either side of a thing in order to let the huge press go or whatever. And like, we wouldn't have these kinds of safety measures if not for the people that have unfortunately gotten smooshed or whatevered along the way. I think what Elon Musk is doing is bad and wrong, just kind of across the board for this. This is not the ideal path forward. But by having done that and being in such a public amount of light, I think that eventually regulation is going to come out about it. I think eventually we are going to, by virtue of having seen what isn't great, learn what to do instead. And you could make arguments as well of like, well, because it's uncensored, because he'll do this and that it's smarter. Like and I think we talked about this like dozens of episodes ago, but there is a technique called obliteration with an A at the beginning, where you can basically take the actual weights, the like neural network nodes in a large language model and just say, I found the part where if it's going to say no to my answer, just remove that. It's literally not allowed to start down that path. And so it will never say no to your request anymore. When you do that, it gets overall less smart. And so there is an argument to say, well, by virtue of letting it talk about anything, it's going to be less constrained and thus perhaps more intelligent. I think there is something to that. I also think that like Switzerland, not like a country in Switzerland, like the country of Switzerland just released a large language model that's allegedly fluent in 1,000 languages. I, as someone who studied linguistics, believe that if you have a better understanding of more languages, that you have a better understanding of like how humans communicate, sort of in general. Every language brings a little something to the table. So do I think that Grok 4 is bad and Elon Musk should feel bad for what he's done? Yes, from like how we're being made to interact with it, not necessarily from the technical acumen behind the model itself.
Do you think there is a mainstream future for uncensored models that, you know, let's fast forward 5 years from now, will it be really easy to get a pure uncensored model?
It already is. People with consumer grade hardware can already go online and download like LM Studio or whatever. Now, granted, it's not as easy as, well, it is actually as easy as go to the App Store and download this app, because people have made uncensored AI, whatever, just wrappers into an iPhone app or what have you. So there literally is a mainstream present where you can do that. And I will admit that it is even more mainstreamer to have X, you know, originally Twitter, a huge platform, just say, we're giving everyone access to the lingerie model.
Yeah.
I guess if that's the future where everyone has access to something like this, neat, I suppose. But
and so
we've talked about like there's the big models that are going to be over API or from someone else's website that you have to like pay for or at least access, and maybe they're training off of you. But then that there will always be a case for like local large language models. And there's even edge computing. Like my phone, for example, can just have a large language model in it. Not a very powerful one, and it'll chew up through the battery very quickly, but it can.
Yeah, with the next, I know with the next iOS release, there are several large language models included as part of that.
Yeah, they'll totally get it this time.
They're limited, but it's a start. But it doesn't seem to be hurting business, I guess, for Grok, because they did land this large DoD contract. I mean, large, I guess, is relative. It's like 300 million. Am I remembering that number correctly?
Right. And so OpenAI did the same however many months/year plus ago. Basically, any of these particularly large language model providers are going to be approached by governments, and they're going to say like, hey, we have sensitive material that we want to do. Here is an on-premise solution that we want to have. It's our own servers. It's not connected to the rest of the internet. We can put classified information to it, and you're not going to train on it. And it's not going to make its way out. It's like in a facility somewhere. But we get access to our own deployment of Grok 4 or OpenAI's O3 or whatever, really. And the big difference here, I think, being that you could just take a local large language model that the weights are freely available for everyone to use and just do that. But when the government is saying, here's a whole bunch of money, large language model provider, maybe they're doing a couple specific fine tunes of their model based on like the DoD, whatever specific data. But for the most part, it's them getting to be able to access in whatever secure way and make sure that they're helped with putting something that you're not usually allowed to download yourself to have their own version of. You've worked with on-premise versus not, just cloud computing before, Hunter. What do you think of this? Am I oversimplifying where I'm just saying it's them wanting their own instance of Grok 4?
I think the interesting, or the part that I'm interested in, is it just that they're testing out all of the AI models? And so Grok 4 is a new one. It has a lot of intelligence. So, hey, yes, they definitely want a local running one in their GovCloud, FedRAMP, secured infrastructure, because that's just the requirements of working with those types of data. But my interest is more like, do they have a specific use case, or is this more of like a benchmarking exercise? That's what I'm curious about. Did they see Grok 4 and say, this is, we had this project that's just been sitting on the back burner for the last 5 years. Johnny's been talking about wanting to do this project, and finally Grok 4 has come out, and we believe that Grok 4 is going to unleash this big thing? Or is it just, no, we're just like evaluating tech, and yeah, we use large language models. We don't actually care which one we use, but we just evaluate whatever comes out. And so we keep these contracts open. I also wouldn't be surprised if these contracts include a sort of like early look provision where now they get early access to these things and kind of the opportunity to potentially steer it a little bit. The government's famous for kind of slowing down some technological advancements so that our enemies don't get it.
I think some of it is that feeling of keeping up with the Joneses. But if they're looking at Grok 4 and saying, but it can do all this new function calling and tool usage and MCP servers and whatever else, like, okay, you could be downloading for free a version of like DeepSeek's R1. You can just download that. The reason why a lot of people are skittish of like, please don't use it, is because if you're using it over API, you're sending stuff to China. If you download the thing and you have it in an air-gapped environment and whatever, you can just use it. Or there's new Quen models. I'm just using buzzwords that don't mean anything to some of the people watching the show. But like,
we talked about Quen.
There's a huge model from Quen that's available that, like, I'm going to say that we're spoiled as people in this sort of space. And the reason why we're spoiled is because what is freely available, something that you could just download if you have the compute for it, is already way more powerful than like a GPT 3.5, GPT 4. I've seen there's a brand new model on the block. Its name's Kimi. It's from Moonshot AI, also from China.
K2.
Huh?
K2.
K2. Thank you. Kimi K2.
Yes.
Right. Right, because there's a few different Kimi models. There's a Kimi Audio, there's a Kimi this, that. So Kimi K2 is gobsmackingly huge. It's like a billion parameter weight model. Not a billion, excuse me, a trillion, I think. Let's call it a small large language model that many people would be able to run possibly on their phones, and certainly on like a halfway decent computer. 7 billion parameter model, maybe up to 14. This is a trillion. Wowzers. And it's insane benchmarks all over the place.
Right, they're saying it compares very favorably to Claude 3.5.
Which I've had been using for I'm now fully, like, I'll just use 4 all the time. But Claude 3.5, and they keep saying 3.6 because there's like a revamp of 3.5. Sure. And then the next one was 3.7. So that was basically 3.6. It compares to what I think is well into the could be a daily driver for most people doing it for like coding tasks and so on.
At a tiny fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
Like
right. If you're going to use like one of their providers out there, tiny fraction of the cost. And I've heard, I haven't actually used it myself, but I've heard it's very creative. There's a lot of like GPT-isms out there where whether it be OpenAI blowing smoke up your rear or like other things that we've kind of gotten used to of like LLMs tend to talk to us like this. It doesn't. It seems to have like a personality all its own. And right now, everything that I've been hearing is that it's extremely good and very refreshing. But on that extremely good front, and as that relates to tool use and so on, why does the government need to spend $300 million on saying, hey, let us have access to Grok in a slightly more like recent version of it? I've worked at a government contractor and stuff goes so slowly and takes so long there. They're going to be evaluating whatever for, frankly, a lot of time. New models come out way faster than the speed of government. And I don't just mean regulation. Like, so what that they're spending $300 million? It seems weird that they would bother doing that. Like, I'm not exactly going to put on a tinfoil hat, but they could have saved that $300 million. Why would they spend that? Is there a reason why it went to Grok as opposed to OpenAI, Anthropic, or just save the 300 mil and run something themselves?
So you're saying Doge should have killed this contract? Right.
Doge, with its own connections up to Musk and so on, should totally be investigating. Did that stop being a thing altogether once Musk was ousted from it, or is it still
I believe it is still it is still a thing. It's. I mean, it never had any actual power. It had the power to investigate, but it couldn't take action. Doing a lot. Well, it didn't do a lot. It could only make recommendations to people who could do a lot, and it can still do that.
Sure.
But obviously, anyways, it still exists. They're still investigating things. People have just gotten a little bit tired of the investigations, and I mean, I don't know, kind of like the sad reality of it is that let's just, even when it finds legitimate, overspending, is that overspending is benefiting someone that is voting for people. And so when you say, oh, you know what, Daniel, I found your contract for $300 million to sell Kimi K2 to the government. We're going to go ahead and cut that. When I do that, you're not going to vote for me anymore, right? Like you're going to anger previously. How did you get that contract? Because you supported 18 senators to get elected. That's just
that's what I was alluding to, is that this is maybe not necessarily the best use of that money, but it has a lot to do more with the politics of it, which...
I see it more of less that they're really buying the technology, more of a networking thing. They want to have their hands in the leading AI companies in the United States, so that they're staying on top of the latest things and they can potentially steer it a little bit.
And it's not just governments. Like, there are companies that are sending out press releases of like, now we're, full in on OpenAI or Claude. I think it was like one of the bigger automotive like dealership groups in the country just announced a dealership or a partnership with Claude, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, there was an article about that. It's now, I think it's 75% of the S&P 500. So as a publicly traded company, every year you have to do lots of different SEC filings. And one of those is where you catalog all the risks that your company potentially has. As a publicly traded company, you have to be extremely transparent, almost to the point of where you're like, here are all the possible things that could go wrong, so that as an investor, you're fully aware. And something that has started cropping up more and more, and in fact, now in 75% of these filings, is the note that like Mecha Hitler could show up. So
I think they're wording it like that, but
I'm paraphrasing.
AI represents a risk, whether it be misuse of AI for like disinformation campaigns, for example, or malicious code getting out there. But then there's also, which I think is it's part of the exact same risk that they already state for over-reliance on cloud vendors of like, look, it's Google Cloud, Azure, or AWS. And that's 3 companies that are like 90 whatever % of cloud providers for all these different services. And if something happens to them, we're in trouble.
Right. And this is
same thing for AI now, right? There's Anthropic, there's OpenAI, there's X, there's, I guess you could call like Mistral, and then there's other players in the game, freely available or otherwise. But in terms of like let's call it US based or US friendly big companies. There's, Meta, there's a few, but not a ton. And that's going to show up in these filings of there is risk there, especially whenever you're pouring in roughly infinite money into let's make some new models. And maybe they're not going to see returns on that. And maybe the bubble will pop at some point. And then maybe folks will get in trouble.
But I also think it's more about as these companies and every company is relying more and more on AI. And I don't know that it's really different than the humans they're relying on before. They make mistakes too. But
sure.
Large mistakes are going to be made in accounting, in press releases, in managing social media stuff. Like there's going to be giant mess ups that are going to happen, and they happen because the AI made a decision and ran with it.
But people make those same problems
absolutely
now. Right.
And potentially they're making less.
Potentially.
But like, I was just trying to think, would an employee accidentally identify themselves as Mecha Hitler on the company's official social media?
People get fired for like bad social media stuff all the time.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's plausible.
I think that's one of the big risks that maybe not every company is as willing to talk about is that some companies have truly existential threats of AI is coming for their lunch. We were talking about this earlier. Call centers. Now, I don't know how many publicly traded call centers there are, but call centers are in for a rough next couple of years.
I feel like call centers have had nothing but rough years.
Have you ever worked on like a call line like that?
No, I'm thankful for that. I did watch. There was a really great HBO documentary.
I worked for a tier 1 support for a help desk at a university for a while, and that was bad enough. But yeah, people who work call centers, people who do labeling of things for a living, those have been steadily eroded over the years, and it's just going to accelerate. Self-driving car related stuff. I know we haven't really talked much about that this episode, but assuming that continues to develop, I keep saying 10% of the US workforce drives stuff for a living. So SEC filings are, I won't say a weather bell, but like there is indication at a greater economic scale that more people are becoming aware that this is going to change the world, dare I say. Certainly the economy or the number of jobs or specific companies or what have you. But like this is not just some neat thing that you can chat with and get to show up in its lingerie on your Twitter account. It's going to change the world. It's going to change jobs. Some are going to pop into existence. Some are going to go away. Is it more that go away? I think so. Probably. Is it going to happen all at once? Probably not. But more people are starting to notice.
That was only for research for the show. My interactions.
Right.
Okay. And it was
big
research.
Disclaimer at the bottom of the screen.
Research. Here. Blinking. Research only. Now, one bit of good news on the AI is going to take all of our jobs. And one of those jobs that people point to nonstop are software engineers. You guys are going to lose your jobs really quickly because one of the favorite things of all these companies to train these AI models on is writing code, because it's like one of the few things that there actually is a real revenue model, a very like clear, direct, making billions of dollars by generating code today. Not like it's not theoretical.
This code makes our products. We sell those, and this code costs money from developers.
But there was a study that came out of the last week that suggested that the AI tooling is slowing down very senior engineers, that it actually is not. And there were some, there was scenarios, and these were older code bases where they're very familiar with them, but they
especially
were not
bigger code bases too.
Yeah, large code base. So you're limited on that sort of content because the AI large language models can only take in so much information at one time, that the very senior engineers were faster and better at getting things through. And it was actually a productivity hit. They were 19% slower when equipped with the AI tools versus no AI tools.
I 1,000,000% believe it. And I'll tell you why. With a big old code base, you've got years of meetings that you've sat in as Mr. Senior Engineer that you're aware of why certain design decisions were made that probably never got documented anywhere. You know the various iterations of the code that have already happened. You remember that having changed this one thing will break other undocumented feature and so on. And there's only so many comments and only so many pieces of documentation and only so many meeting notes that describe all of this. And so you have this institutionalized knowledge that that senior engineer has. Couple that with a really big code base where maybe not everything is going to fit into this model's memory. Couple that with maybe potentially vague demands from your product managers, or even if it's just fix this one bug, it could be a really big, hairy thing where there's unit tests in 5 separate repositories that might break based off of what you're going to change this one line to do. And I think that these LLMs have been very, very good at, like, I'm going to one-shot a game of Snake or a game of Pac-Man, or like there's a lot that these things can basically just poop out in one go and it works. And that's honestly really, really incredible. And I don't want to pretend that that's not incredible. But when it comes to affecting a small change in a big existing place, I think there's so much more. It's not just like risk. It's that there's this complexity that you aren't going to be able to give it every piece of knowledge that it needs to do the job. Can AI still fill in some of the boilerplate code for you along the way? Yes. But if you sit back and just say, AI, do this entire job for me instead, I think that that's much more prone to failure. So that's where that time loss comes from.
When you hire a new engineer onto a large legacy code base, you have to give them time to onboard to the code base, where they're spending a significant amount of time reviewing the code, reading about it, playing with it before they start actually working on it. We're assuming that this is a code base that is not well maintained, right, was not well architected, that was not well documented. I just imagine we just need to come up with the similar process for the AI to do. They need to go through an onboarding exercise where they're going to build out documentation and experimentation. And a lot of research hasn't gone into that. But I do find that over this last year, the AI has gotten significantly better at working in well-documented, well-architected code bases, where I now have like a pretty good 3 to 4 step process where I can give the AI fairly complex features that it implements relatively close to how I would. I still have to review it. There's
always tweaks.
Yeah, there's probably an error in there, like at least one error 80% of the time, but it's pretty darn close to being a real engineer on the team.
It's really close to being self-aware.
It is. It's getting there. There are those out there that believe that we've already achieved AGI. I'm not one of them. And that now we're really just working on the superintelligence, the path to superintelligence, where the one AI can just do absolutely everything.
We'll see how that challenge goes.
Godlike genius. Oh, the money making?
Yeah. If somebody wins that, will you be willing to say that we did it? We got AGI?
Oh. Well, I think that's one of the markers for AGI, but the question of...
Like, it's an obviously flawed premise. So last, I think, episode, I threw down the gauntlet and said, if you can get an AI with some caveats, and I wrote up a bunch, and this will be public by the time that you listen to this. If you can have an AI from start without your intervention make money, AGI, we did it. Now, granted, to say that what makes something generally intelligent is the ability to exist in a capitalist society and make money within it, obviously a flawed premise. But it's really hard to exist in our society and with nothing to your name say, I will now go and make money, and then successfully do that. Like, I think that's extremely hard to do without having tools that you can successfully use and an ability to interact with the world in a economically meaningful way. So is it for every definition AGI? But no. How about for my X% of people, Y% of the time, Z% of cases? Yeah, I think that's a huge bump up there.
I might be willing to accept that if we can build an agent that with a very high probability, given the task of go out and make $1, comes back and has made $1. That by being able to do that, and they didn't just get lucky. They didn't say, well, what sports games are on tonight? I'm just going to pick a team and I get lucky some of the times. No, this is statistically significant. They're actually doing something that in order to do that, must they have achieved AGI? That my counter feelings on is like, well, algorithmic trading models already exist and have existed for a long time. And no one thinks that they're AGI. And isn't that a way of making
stock
money?
Market's all a bunch of nonsense anyways. So that's why, and this is in the instructions that we're giving to everyone, stock market doesn't count. Can't do that one.
And so you just effectively find arbitrage opportunities. And so, arbitrage bots have existed for, a very long time where there are two different marketplaces. Oh, I buy it here when the price is low because I see on eBay, I can sell it at a 40% premium. And all it does is just constantly looks at prices and finds it. Or arbitrage from a trading standpoint, because there's all sorts of Bitcoin exchanges and Bitcoin trades at all different prices in these different exchanges. So sure. you look for the delta between the two and execute the trades automatically. But I think the AGI part of it would be that you didn't say, go build an arbitrage bot focused on these things. Right.
You because said go make some exist to do that kind of thing. And you could put something like that together manually or even with the help of AI. But you can't just take from absolute, you exist now and here's an instantation of you, Claude, and here's a bunch of tools, go make $10. I do think that it's a fairly hard challenge that we've put out because we're specifically saying you don't get any money to start. Maybe we have to do another follow-up version where you start with $100, you have to end up with 110.
I'm definitely willing to entertain the idea that if you're able to do this, if AI is able to go out and effectively get a job on its own and exist on its own, I mean, that's really what we're talking about. Is can it exist on its own? Because once it can make $1, can it pay its own server bills? Can it start expanding?
Right.
That all becomes super
live
plausible.
In our society. And when I say live, I mean keep its own lights on.
Yes.
Basically.
And the moment that it can live in our society it's achieved some level of sentience. It's achieved some level of self-awareness. It's all kind of weird and but what is self-awareness? But it is a being existing on its own in our society in the way that humans exist. That we gather our resources, and it's not a simulation, it is real.
I'm going to say, depending on when this comes out and when the challenge ends and so on, you either will or won't hear this in time. But you probably will, right? We're going to be talking next week about browsers, like web browsers and agents. And I think that we're headed, one of the possibilities here is of personal assistant. I genuinely think that that's a reasonable path forward. Now, you're not allowed to tell your AI, go be one. Maybe it comes up with the idea on its own.
Waifu?
I didn't know. You wait, Hunter. We'll talk about browsers and clearing our browser histories later.
For research purposes.
Oh, boy.
Well,
but
folks, in the meantime, you've been listening to They Might Be Self-Aware, the #1 AI podcast on self-awareness, because I'm not aware of any others, so I think we can claim that flag at least.
I'm aware of self.
I'm aware of self. You can watch us on YouTube. There is a video version of this show. You can listen to us anywhere. You can find podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast directory.
You want to see some shorts? We got shorts on YouTube, on TikTok.
Yeah, we are now, it's closing in around 4,000 people. Every single episode are consuming some part of every episode. And that number keeps growing. So that's
amazing.
That's really great to see if you're consuming us right now.
Thank you for being one of the thousands. Soon millions, eventually billions.
Yeah, it's inevitable. Yeah, if you want to keep going, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave us a comment. We do read them all. We respond to most of them, a lot of them. Some of them, occasionally.
Not none of them. I'll tell you that much.
We did respond to one of them. I definitely did that. And with that, until next time, you have been listening to...
They might be self-aware.